Hey YouTube, Meef here. Welcome to episode 34 of our Feed the Beast Continuum Quick Tips and Tricks. Let's see what we got here for today. Looks like vacuum freezer, the Igneous Extruder, and we're looking at the Tier 3 Void Miner, which I've got set up down there. It's been a little while since I've actually done an episode here. It's taken a while to acquire the materials for this, and I'll go over why in just a little bit, but you'll notice that this setup here is significantly larger. So, if you remember, the previous Tier 2 setup sat right here. The size of this thing, I didn't like it, so I moved it down here. You're going to see it's a little bit taller. I think it takes up 6, including the top. 6 vertical, and you can see that the width here has changed as well, because you can see that there's accuracy upgrades in here. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So here's the third flavor of that. You'll see here that this is a little bit expensive. So we've got structure frame tier 3. A bunch of structure panels, some laser cores. These aren't expensive, and a lens. So let's take a look at the structure frame on tier 3 here. Let's go like this. That'll get us there easy. So the structure frame from tier 3, we're gonna need a bunch of tier 2s. Tier 2s, they aren't all that complicated to make, but you are gonna need a shitload of basalt. And the reason for that being is you're going to need more of these tier 2s than what you've got. So just keep that in mind. Tier 1, not all that difficult. Get yourself some interconnects. They're not that complicated to make. Keep up on the black concrete. Make a few stacks of that. Should keep you set for a while. Connectors, no problem. Redstone, iron, should be keeping up on that. So let's go back up a level here. Block of aluminum brass. This is pretty easy to come by. This isn't all that complicated. I've been stuffing this stuff in the arc furnace. 3 pulverized aluminum goes in with some copper ingots and dumps 4 of those brass ingots out. So I got a few stacks of those pumped out pretty quick. Again, it's just the arc furnace, and then you're dumping through some electrodes, which isn't a big deal. Just kind of a pain in the ass to have to manually feed those, but nature of the beast. So the tier 3 structure frame itself requires an entire block of this empowered palace crystal block. And in order to get that, I think we went over this for something else. But this is going to be these crystals, and it's done on the empowerer. And you need the prismarine shards, so you should go find a guardian out in the ocean. You gotta have these fucking things, which really sucks, but again, nature of the beast. You're gonna need a bunch of them. So get these, get those guardians in your mob spawner and start dumping this stuff out. Cyan dye. This is pretty simple to make. I've been using lapis and cactus greens to do that. So that stuff's there. This stuff isn't all that complicated to make. And I'm going to show this again because I royally screwed this up when I was making a whole bunch of shit earlier. The setup on these things, it'll take an input from an item duct. So if you see here, what I've got going is a chest, item duct with a servo on it. Whatever goes into the chest gets pumped down here. It'll only accept one. Stuff it in there, it'll show up, no problem. It just works. What I've got going over here, the setup is a little bit different. So the chest actually outputs whatever's in here. It doesn't matter. I think I was doing circuits earlier. It'll put it into the empowerer. So once the recipe for the entire structure is set, it'll start, doing its laser thing. Once it's done, it'll sit there. So I set up another servo and whitelisted these things. So I was making electronic circuits over here, and it was pretty simple. I didn't have to go through and make a bunch of, insulated copper wires to do this over an EFAB setup. Honestly, it makes more sense to do it over here with this setup, because you could do stacks and stacks and stacks. You don't have to babysit it, and you don't have to build a crafter for the EFAB. Eventually, I think I'm going to have to do that, but for my purposes, because I was really lazy, I was just doing other random stuff. I'd make a whole shitload of circuits over here, and then just come pick them up out of this chest. So that was no problem. So if you whitelist, you flip this button over, you'll whitelist electronic circuits. Here I've got that crystal block in my advanced electronic circuits. So as soon as that shows up in this Empowerer, it I should say instantly, it pulls it out right away and puts it right into the chest, stacks it up, and it's already pushing down from the top chest and to start it over again. So check this setup out. This is cheap. This is cheap as shit, and I might have to add a note into some previous videos on the Empowerer, because this, I should have done this a long time ago. So keep this in mind. Add this to your setup now. If you're making electronic circuits, it's almost faster to do this if you haven't done the crafter setup. I haven't got there yet. There's other things that I'm looking forward to, like that Emmy network, as you can see over there. So let's talk about a couple other things here. We've got this vacuum freezer. And I'm going to see if I can find this quick. Where in the hell did that go? I suppose it's on the next one. Did we look at it? I know this was important because we needed it for... It was tungsteel. Was it the Emmy controller? I don't think it was. It was something else. Is definitely a requirement. Anyway, if I can think of it. God damn, that's gonna drive me nuts now. Cycler. Ah, it was this. Vacuum freezer, and then some reinforced machine casings. This is an uncomplicated machine to make, and it does have some uses. But anyway, once you make hot tungsteel over there in that machine, you can actually stuff it into that vacuum freezer and make regular tungsteel. And if I remember correctly, let's just take a look at what the tier 3 void. Yep. Here it is, tungsteel ingot. So in order to even make this tier 3 controller, you gotta have tungsteel ingots, and you can make those in the vacuum freezer out of hot tungsteel. So that's where that came into play. So this setup isn't all that complicated either. This is relatively simple. It's just that you have to build the vacuum freezer in order to even get the tungsteel to build that controller. So that's why this is sitting over here. I haven't used it a whole lot. I've used it for the 4 ingots in order to make that thing, and this is where it sits. So setup on this isn't all that complicated. The machine itself, input through the top, you're not going to need any of that shit right now. So packed ice might come into play at some point, but we'll cross that road when we get there. Next machine I made was this Igneous Extruder, and there's a reason I did that. So these tier 3 structure frames, you're going to see, these outside blocks are all obsidian. Now, if you want to go downstairs and mine out, 4 stacks of obsidian, more power to you. I sure as hell was not going to do that, so I set the machine up. This machine here isn't all that complicated. There is some configuration stuff. You'll see I've got this hooked into my Emmy network, so there is a certain amount of configuration that's done on here. But let's take a look at what it costs to make this goofy thing. Not all that complicated. Igneous Extruder, so this is just the basic machine. Just a machine frame, some glass, a little bit of Invar copper, and then the redstone reception coil. So that's pretty much all that machine is. Now, what I did to this machine is because when it's making this, the basic machine is rather slow. But if you look at augmentation here, oh, and I don't actually have that in there. I think I've already got that attached to the machine because it rips through there so fast. But anyway, we get to the point here where Let's look at augmentation. And I think we can upgrade that one. Where the hell is it? Is it this guy? It's one of these augments. It's not the nullification chamber. Not that. That's not what we're looking for. One of these guys. Maybe it's not on here anymore. I thought it was. That's okay. We won't worry about it this episode. It's not in here anyway. This will pump out some obsidian pretty fast. One of the problems I had though is that I didn't feel like going to drag lava up from either underneath the base or going to the nether to get it. I had a reservoir here. If you haven't made one of these, do it because it works as a bobble. But right here, rather than run around with a bucket, it does the same fucking thing. You get 250 buckets here. These things aren't expensive to make. Let's look at this reservoir real quick while we got a little bit of time here. The very first one, this costs nothing to make. And you're walking around with the equivalent of 10 buckets. So it's a portable tank. You get into these higher sets here. So this one, this is very cheap to make. Just a little bit of electrum. You're obligated for a little bit of hardened glass here. But that's just a little bit of pulverized obsidian. To get into this signalum and a little bit of cryothium, you should have that made already. And to get this into the resonant state here, signalum, little enderium, and pyrotheum. You should have this pyrotheum already. These are cheap as shit to make. Do it, you'll be happy. So 250 buckets worth. Now I'm going to demo this thing. And the way this works, let's see here. Let's do a little bit of netherrack in here. If I have any left, yes I do. We're going to do 5 of those. So the reason this all came about is I'm not sure if I demoed that last time, but I've had this reservoir for a while. I'm not sure if I brought it up or not, but we're going to talk about this now. So this Magma Crucible, you'll see here I do have an augmentation here. This is a pyroconvective loop. So what this does is greatly increases lava production speed. Let's take this bitch out of here. It does increase the power, but look. Oops. What do we got stuff in here? That's not what I wanted. Well, that's compressed netherrack. Absolutely not what I wanted. Let's get this out of here. There, that's better. Let's take a look at the speed. Is that also compressed? Oh man, I'm having a bad day. Okay, so netherrack into the Magma Crucible. So right now it's using 75 RF per tick. Not a big deal, but you can see rather slow. We can speed this up. This pyroconnective loop, or pyroconvective. Here's the one that speeds up that goofy extruder. No water consumed. But anyway, not complicated. Nether brick, a little bit of invar, a couple pistons, and a conductance coil. But watch when we put this in here. We'll let this one go. I'm gonna shift click that bad boy in there. Look at that thing rock. Just goes for cheap. Now the power use goes up to 750 RF per tick, so that's a significant jump from 75 RF per tick. But this cruises pretty fast. So let's take a look here. I'm gonna put this in here, and it's gonna fill this up. So we've got 3 buckets, 4 buckets, 5 buckets. We've got a couple settings here. So we've got this reservoir. If you click V on here, we can set it to fill or empty. And just for shits, let's fill this. So let's rob out our seared tank here. So we've officially robbed that. But since it's set back to fill, we can fill this bad boy right back up. It's just like a bucket, except we don't have to do all the legwork of constantly have to transfer stuff back and forth. This, I actually dumped this set of portable tanks into here. Let's ditch this quick, and I can demo this because I think these These reservoirs are cool as shit. We'll just put that back in there. Cool thing about this is it'll dump the whole 250 buckets right into your Emmy network. You don't have to worry about it. It's all done. So we've got this set for fill again, and I'll just start taking this stuff out of here. See how it just keeps going? So that's empty. That's all done. No problem. I was pulling 250 buckets out of here. Whole tank was empty in a couple. So let's put this shit back in here. There we go. And let's set this back to fill. Whoops. And so that bad boy is full. Full 250 buckets. So works pretty well. I'm very impressed with it. But anyway, let's get back to the task at hand now that we've gone over this. So make one of those. They're cheap. So as you can see, I dumped that lava back into the ME network. So what does that do here? If you look at what I've got set up, this export bus, this is a fluid export bus. This is dumping lava into this machine, and it'll do that continuously because I don't have any buttons on here. That's why this is on a lever. This here is only 4 buckets worth, so I can afford to do that. That's not a big deal. I don't care. Let's look at the setup. So out the top, I'm not using any of this stuff, but I've got the auto output disabled. Just kind of set this up the same way. So the top is input, left and right are output. So I've got an ME import bus. Now this isn't fluid, this is just an import bus. So whatever's created over here in the right is taken out of and put right back into the network. So if we're doing basalt or we're doing obsidian, all that stuff is pushed right back into the ME network. I can demo this a little bit. Let's take a look at what's going on here. We can make some basalt. Let's go run over to the ME network. That's just going to do its business. And let's type that in here. And as you can see, 864, 865. And there you have it. So we've automated that. You don't have to worry about picking that up for tier 2 structure stuff. It can just be done. And I think, let's take a look at this. I'm going to shut this off so it's not making a bunch of stuff. Here you've got a few options. Cobblestone, stone. There's obsidian. And with this set of mod packs, you get some of this goofy ass andesite and granite, diorite. All that shit's in there. I'm really only concerned with obsidian right now, so I'm going to do the rest of this batch as obsidian. And you'll notice that this is relatively fast. That one setup, that one augmentation that can go in here for not using water. Since we've got this hooked up to a sink, I don't think there's really an issue. We could speed this up by getting rid of these pipes and putting in different fluid ducts, but this is fast enough to do whatever the hell you're going to need, so keep that in mind. But anyway, that's the way this works. Once you get to this point, you're going to have to start organizing channels, and we're going to start going over that in the next episode. We're going to talk a little bit about Emmy Crafting. You can see I've got the crafting computer, the very start of it, hanging off the backside of the Emmy network here. We're going to have to start worrying about channels, and this begins our road to Emmy channel anguish. But there are a few things here that can help us not have such a shitty time with doing that. So let's take a look at our obsidian here just to see. You can see there's a pretty good pile of this stuff in there right now, and it's just importing and it does its business. So get a bunch of that stuff going. You're going to need it anyway. The one thing I did want to take a look at one more time here on this tier 3 structure frame. Just keep in mind you're going to need a bunch more connectors, so keep that redstone flowing. You're going to need it. Okay, I think that's it for this episode. We'll catch you in the next one. Until next time.